From the outside, Jeffrey Epstein appeared to be the embodiment of success. A man of immense wealth, charm, and intellect, a financier with an affinity for science, education, and philanthropy. Yet beneath this carefully curated image existed a dark empire of exploitation. The story that follows is not simply about one man's crimes, but about the machinery of privilege that enabled them to flourish unchecked for decades. Epstein's life began in Brooklyn in 1953. Bright and ambitious, he started as a teacher in a Manhattan private school before entering finance. By the 1980s, he had climbed through the ranks of Bear Stearns and founded his own financial management firm. His client list was exclusive, his lifestyle extravagant, and his connections, political, academic, and royal, became a shield of legitimacy. He hosted gatherings with scholars and celebrities, donated to prestigious causes, and presented himself as a visionary investor devoted to the advancement of science. But within these elite circles, he also constructed a network of manipulation, using influence and wealth to conceal abuse. What began as social charm soon became a sophisticated system of control. Epstein's power stemmed not only from money but from access. The quiet invitations, the private jets, the exclusive estates in Palm Beach, Manhattan, and the US Virgin Islands. Behind the walls of these properties, he and his associates orchestrated the grooming and sexual abuse of countless underage girls. Each encounter followed a disturbingly familiar pattern: the promise of opportunity, emotional dependence, and the gradual erosion of boundaries until the victim's autonomy disappeared entirely. The young women, often from disadvantaged backgrounds, became commodities in a marketplace of privilege. By the mid-2000s, the first cracks appeared. In 2005, a complaint in Palm Beach triggered a state and federal investigation. Yet justice would not come easily. In 2008, Epstein struck what many would call the deal of a lifetime. A non-prosecution agreement quietly negotiated with federal prosecutors granted him broad immunity, including protection for unnamed co-conspirators. His punishment was minimal: a short county jail term, extensive work release privileges, and freedom from the federal charges that his victims had prayed would finally expose him. The secrecy surrounding that agreement and the government's failure to inform the victims revealed something far deeper than one man's manipulation. It showed a justice system bent by power. The victims' voices, long silenced, began to surface again a decade later. Journalistic perseverance, particularly the Miami Herald's perversion of justice investigation, reignited public outrage. Their reporting laid bare how prosecutors, attorneys, and even institutions had shielded Epstein from accountability. The 2019 arrest was a moment of reckoning. Epstein charged once more with sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. For a fleeting moment, it seemed the system might correct its past mistakes. But that moment would vanish inside a cell in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. Epstein's death on August 10, 2019, marked the collapse of a second illusion, the belief that justice would finally prevail. Officially ruled a suicide, his death unfolded amid glaring procedural failures, malfunctioning cameras, inattentive guards, and a cascade of bureaucratic neglect. The public reaction was immediate. Theories multiplied, suspicions deepened, and the government's credibility faltered. Whether by conspiracy or incompetence, Epstein's death robbed survivors of a trial, deprived the nation of answers, and exposed the fragility of institutional integrity. The outrage that followed was not only about how Epstein died, but about what his death symbolized: a system too broken to protect the vulnerable or to hold the powerful to account. Even in death, the shadows of Epstein's influence lingered. His longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, became the embodiment of complicity. Her arrest and 2021 conviction revealed the role of enablers, the silent partners who maintained his operations. Prosecutors demonstrated that Maxwell recruited and groomed victims, facilitated encounters, and normalized abuse under the guise of mentorship. Her conviction was not just personal justice, it was institutional redemption, a faint restoration of faith in accountability. Yet it also exposed how female perpetrators can be woven into patriarchal systems of exploitation, both victims and agents of abuse. Maxwell's presence shattered stereotypes of trafficking as a male-only crime and forced society to confront the gendered complexity of exploitation. The aftermath of these revelations shook not only courts, but also the corridors of power. Epstein's connections, from presidents to princes, scientists to CEOs, invited endless speculation. Flight logs, photographs, and guest lists blurred the line between proximity and participation. Responsible journalism distinguished rumor from evidence, yet the opacity of justice invited conspiracy. For the public, the absence of prosecutions for the powerful was proof enough of corruption. Trust in institutions eroded further, and the question lingered. How could one man evade justice for so long in plain sight, surrounded by those sworn to uphold it? Congressional inquiries and Department of Justice reviews followed. Reports condemned procedural lapses, communication failures, and the secrecy of the 2008 deal. Yet even these official investigations seemed too little, too late. The victims, once invisible, had become central to a national debate on transparency, victim rights, and prosecutorial accountability. Legal scholars called for reforms to outlaw secret plea deals, strengthen victim notification, and reform custodial oversight for high-profile detainees. In Epstein's story, they saw not just criminal depravity, but a roadmap of systemic decay. As the years passed, the Epstein case evolved from scandal to symbol, a cautionary tale of unchecked privilege. It showed how wealth distorts justice, how institutions falter under influence, and how silence becomes complicity. It exposed the uncomfortable truth that in the upper echelons of society, accountability is often negotiable. But beyond the sensationalism lies the enduring human cost. Survivors carry scars invisible to public record, lives interrupted, trust destroyed, and justice delayed. Their courage forced a reckoning with the systems that betrayed them. Each testimony, each lawsuit, each demand for reform became an act of reclamation. Against the weight of money, secrecy, and indifference, they spoke truth to power. The Epstein saga, at its core, is not about one predator or even a network of enablers. It is about how privilege, when left unchecked, corrodes justice. It is about the failure of oversight, the blind spots of power, and the institutional complicity that allows abuse to thrive behind the veneer of respectability. It is a mirror held to society's face, reflecting the uncomfortable alignment between wealth and immunity. Epstein's world has collapsed, but the questions it raised endure. Who guards the guardians of justice? How many more victims are silenced by systems designed to protect the powerful? The answer lies not in conspiracy, but in accountability. The courage to confront the institutions that prefer darkness to disclosure. Because in the end, the Epstein case is not just a tragedy of individuals, it is a test of our collective moral order. The reckoning has begun. But justice, real justice, is still waiting to be served.